morning, folks, and welcome to another edition of City Hall Live. I am Joe Abeta, and today our guest is Liz Camacho, the Economic Development and Communication Administrator. I got that right, Liz?
Yeah, that's it. That's the title. It's a bit lengthy.
Thank you for joining us today.
Joe.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. So the reason why we have you on is because we want to talk about the living wage increase that's going into effect, or it already is into effect.
No, it's going into effect. It goes into effect on March 1st.
Okay.
A lot of times we get calls to ask kind of like, oh, like, well, I need this information. You should really start it in January. But we don't actually get the information to be able to calculate it until around mid-Jan. Because we're going by the U.S. Labor Department.
Okay. And so tell us what the living wage is. I know it's in other places it'd be called the minimum wage increase, but it's to Santa Fe, the city of Santa Fe, or to Santa Fe County. Who does it affect?
Well, it's we have legislation here at the city of Santa Fe, and so does the county. So it affects both the county and the city of Santa Fe. So the living wage, and we definitely get in contact with each other just to make sure we got the numbers the same. But it's increased, and it applies to both areas.
Okay, and what is it exactly? How much is it? Yeah, I guess how much is it? How much is it increasing to?
Well, so yes, it is what people call the minimum wage. And normally I think at the federal level, it's been 77.25 since 2009.
Okay.
For the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe County, it will increase to 12.32. And that's based on an hourly basis.
Okay. So with that, like, I know that, well, I was in college, I used to serve at a couple of restaurants, and you know, the minimum wage is different for servers because, or tipped employees, right? Because you get a lot of that. Normally you're making more than that with tips. So how does that work with tipped workers?
And so the tipped workers is a little more complicated because that at a federal level, I think that's 213. The state level is 255. And us in the city of Santa Fe, we don't have legislation regarding tipped wages. So So we really adhere to what the state level is, which is 255. The county does have it, and they increase their tipped wage to, I think this year is going to be 369.
Oh, wow.
So the city of Santa Fe, we have we're sovereign. We have our own governing body. So it's not the same. The county's the wage for tipped workers does not necessarily apply to the city of Santa Fe. Now, the one thing is that tip workers are required to make that same amount. So if you're not earning the $12.10 an hour, your employer is responsible for covering that gap to make sure that you make it. Earn it.
Yeah. So like if you're a tip worker and you work all week long and you're only making $3.69 an hour because you're not getting any tips at all, then well, there's a couple of things you might want to think about is why aren't you getting those tips, right? But you are guaranteed that $3.69 an hour, even though that's most of the time not going to happen. You should be getting tips and making more than that per hour, especially here in the city, right, where we're driven by a lot of people love to go out to eat, and also a lot of people like to come and stay with us, right?
Definitely. I mean, I can't speak to how much people leave in tips, nor the quality of the service, which maybe leave you without a tip. Yes, that's the employer will be making that up if you aren't earning it. So, and if you go past it, obviously that's your income. And it's not as if the employer is going to be like, oh, you made $15 an hour last week, and now I will take that extra $3 that you earned over the living wage.
So is there going to be, how does this take, is this like Is there some kind of a threshold that we're going to meet with the living wage, or is it just an automatic thing that happens? Does it happen every year? Does it happen every 2 years? How often and how long is this going to be going on for?
So the legislation definitely says that we will continue increasing every year, and it's adjusted based on the consumer price index. Not just any consumer price index, is for the Western region.
Okay.
So last year, so the increase that we're seeing now is because there was a 1.8 increase in the consumer price index, which
Okay.
people just throw around jargon and terms, and they're like the CPI.
Gotcha.
Basically, what the CPI is, it takes into account, it's an index that takes into account the cost of utilities, food items. They have a specific basket of items, fuel, for instance. So really that index, and for us, what it's supposed to be is that the minimum wage should increase with the increase in cost of living. What will
Gotcha.
if there's a decrease? I do not know. But in the past years, we have had increases.
Okay.
So again,
So,
this year's probably a little previous years, because this year was 1.8, last year was like 2.6%, and the year before 3.54%. I'm not sure
okay.
what is altered that.
Yeah. But it's going to be, so this is to go on as long as there's an increase, there will be an increase in the living wage here in the city.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. This happens on March 1st, right? Is that correct?
It does happen on March 1st, and we try to announce it as soon as we have the information. So Brad Leaflich, who works in the finance department, he does the calculations for it. We have constituent services, and they help make the posters so that employers can put those in a place that's visible and people are aware of the increase. And you can also download those from our website. We get a lot of calls from human resource specialists whose responsibility it is to make sure that that information is public and that employees know and are aware of the increase.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks, Liz. I appreciate it. Anything else that we need to know about the increase on March 1st that I didn't get to?
I think the other question we get a lot is what do I do if my employer isn't meeting that gap, if they're not closing that gap?
Okay.
What
Okay.
if if I'm still earning 1139 and they're basing it on previous amounts? And really, I think both the county and the city have recourses. So for us, you can contact our assistant city attorney, Michael Prince, and you can see that on our website at our city attorney's office. And he can be contacted to help enforce what the ordinance is.
Okay. That's good information to know.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people are like, well, what happens if this isn't happening? And I think sometimes it's also it's also about conversations to have between employers and employees.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, thank you, Liz, for joining us today. We appreciate it. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Joe. Hope to see you soon. Always good to see you and enjoy your City Hall presentation. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you very much. Folks, this has been City Hall Live. Thank you for joining us today. Have a safe week. Have a great week.